All the 5 aircraft are currently at Ambala. Today there will of course be a lot of rest for the pilots. They've come in after a long flight from France and then from Al Dhafra in the United Arab Emirates. I'm sure there will be some squadron celebrations later tonight and this evening, but there's no time to waste, because tomorrow work begins afresh. There's no time or no luxury to relax and chill. The new birds are here and they must be Indianized as quickly as possible. And that's a complicated process. The operationalization of the Rafales is going to be a priority area for the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force has also already declared that all of these pilots are operationally, fully operational on the aircraft, as well as the weapon systems on board. And be that as it may, it's a complicated process to make these aircraft fully Indianized. And I say Indianized in quotes because India has many peculiarities: weather, terrain, the kinds of missions, the kinds of threats that we face, which are extremely different from every other country. And therefore the Rafale, which is a foreign jet, needs to get its Indian colors in more ways than just the flag painted on its skin. And that is something that Indian pilots, Indian technicians, Indian maintainers, Indian battle planners, Indian mechanics, Indian staff on the ground, Indian engineers will ensure is made possible in the shortest possible time. They do not have the luxury of spending a year or more to make these aircraft fully combat ready. And while these aircraft are theoretically already combat ready, it is going to be a complicated process that must take its time, but it will be done as quickly as possible. Abhishek Balla is still with us from outside the Ambala air station. Abhishek, beautiful twin images, one of the Rafales landing, the other of the Rafales taxiing, and these are images from a short while ago, so I imagine that the pilots may have already met the air chief by now. Abhishek, are you hearing anything of that?
Yes, definitely, Shiv. It's been about 10 minutes or even more since the landing has taken place, and obviously a grand welcome was expected, and that's the reason why the Air Force Chief himself had come down to Ambala. And it's a big moment, especially for these pilots who've actually brought the Rafale from Mérignac in France. It was a long journey, and finally they are home, and Rafale has got its new home. A very historic and traditional Air Force base, more than 100 years old. It started operations way back in 1919, when the Royal Air Force of the British was operating out of here. And since then, it has gone through a lot of changes, has seen a lot of action, was attacked by Pakistan in 1965 and in 1971. And the reason for that was this was one of the most important air bases because of its strategic location, and it still remains so. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, it's been upgraded over the last few years, and that's the reason why this air base has been chosen to be the operating base for the Rafale. There are other aircraft like the Jaguars and MiG-21 that also function out of here. So with the Rafale coming in, this becomes even more important. But for the moment,
yes,
it's an extremely proud moment for those fighter pilots, for the entire Indian Air Force that's finally got an aircraft of their choice. It was a long wait, 20 years. It's taken through a lot of negotiations.
Yes.
Of course, we all know the recent political controversies around the procurement of the Rafale. But the reality is that finally it's a touchdown upon Ambala, and very soon it will be part of all important operations, war games, drills, and the pilots and the ground crew will be soon in action with the Rafale.
Absolutely. Very short moment of celebration tonight at the 17th Squadron headquarters in Ambala, and then these birds will have to go through the motions to become operationally ready to meet all of India's many, many requirements, operational and otherwise. So this is the beginning of the Rafale Raj as far as India is concerned. Our sister channel, Aaj Tak, says, "Aa gaye Rafale," which is trending on social media as well. A wonderful way to put it, "Aa gaye Rafale." That's the pithy way that Aaj Tak has described the the arrival of the Rafale jets. In just a short while from now, I'm learning from my sources that we will get some images of the Indian Air Force chief getting introductions with the pilots and then meeting and greeting with the arriving crews. So that's going to happen in just a moment from now. I want to bring, Abhishek continues to be with me, but I'll bring him back in on this because at some stage, Abhishek, will there be some kind of a briefing by the Air Force? Because the Air Chief is inside, the induction is next month. Is it likely that the Air Force will hold some kind of a briefing? Will journalists be allowed to meet the pilots?
Shiv, we're not sure whether there'll be an on-camera briefing, but certainly some kind of a statement is expected from the Indian Air Force, because it's a moment that everybody was waiting for, and that's the reason why we are also expecting that the Indian Air Force will release some visuals or pictures with the pilots, landing here. And the moment that they were greeted by the staff here, and of course, they were welcomed by the Air Force Chief RKS Bhadauria. So that is likely in some time. But I can tell you one thing, that this must be a moment that the pilots who've come and brought the Rafale from France, they're just taking it a little easy. It's been a long journey, and they'll just soak in this moment. It's definitely a proud moment for all of them, and to be welcomed by your chief when you bring in an asset that was being looked forward to for many, many years. It's obviously a very proud as well as a sense of relief that India finally has an aircraft of its choice, what it had been wanting for many, many years. And it hopefully will usher in a new era of acquisitions where, acquisitions do not take such long time, because that's been one of the problems as far as defense procurement is concerned. And many in the establishment are hoping that this will change. Having said that, Shiv, I'll share a small anecdote that was told to me by a former Air Force officer who's commanded here. He told me that on 27th of July 1979, the Jaguars touched down upon Ambala. That time they were the newest induction. And on 27th of July is when the Rafales flew from Merinac to UAE. So it's an interesting coincidence and a bit of a trivia of the Indian Air Force that the Jaguar and the Rafale, they started their journey into the Indian Air Force on the same date, which is 27th of July. And that's quite interesting. And like the Jaguar has served the Indian Air Force for so many years, we can definitely expect the Rafale to do a similar service.